Today we're talking about Shaun of the Dead, which, if you don't know what this movie is, this was advertised as a zombie movie that's also a romantic comedy. Honestly, I don't feel like that works. That doesn't really check out to me. I mean, the relationship between the two main characters, or, three main characters, I guess, is a huge part of the movie, but it really doesn't feel like a romantic comedy at all. It just feels like a comedy. Regardless of what they describe this movie as, we're going to be talking about what happens in this movie. We're going to be talking about how I feel about this movie, which, spoilers, this movie is amazing. Shaun of the Dead is a special movie to me. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. This movie really is a classic in every sense of the word. It's a movie that I watched as a child, which was a terrible mistake. Why did I watch this movie as a child? I should not have done that. But regardless, it was a movie I watched when I was very young, and I enjoyed it a ton. Even as a kid, it was a great watch, and even now, it still holds up pretty well. So to kick things off, we're just zoning into Shaun in the middle of an argument, basically. And this whole scene is so cool because without really telling you anything directly, they convey so much information about what's going on. Like in this one scene alone, they convey the fact that Shaun and Liz have a terrible relationship. Shaun and Ed are roommates. Liz and David and Yvonne are also roommates. It conveys so much information so quickly, and it's so effective. And there's also a ton of stuff in this one scene alone that comes back later. Ed is playing a machine, a Dracula machine. It's like a pinball machine or something like that. And that machine comes back later in a very pivotal point in the movie, very, very important. In fact, it's honestly probably the biggest cause of problems in this movie, is that one Dracula machine. So, we'll point that out when it shows up again. This movie moves real quickly, so immediately we're jumping to Shaun's apartment, and we're right there talking to Shaun's roommate, and we're figuring out more stuff about Ed, figuring out that he's a bit of a dick, and we're also learning about his other roommate, who's even more of a dick. And it's really just conveying this this dynamic of all these characters are interacting with Shaun in kind of a negative way, even the people that are Shaun's friend. And it's really just conveying this notion that Shaun's a bit of a loser, innit? And this is just one of the first instances of them showing off that dynamic of Shaun really just not being very cool. But you know what is cool? Video games and gaming. Which is why Ed is playing a shooting game. And I don't know if this is a real game, but it reminds me a lot of Fear. But yeah, during this scene where Ed is playing the video games, this is one of the most obvious examples of one of the main reasons I like this movie, where every single thing comes back later in some way, shape, or form. But this is one of the more obvious ones out there, where every single direction that Shaun gives Ed in this scene is used later as directions that Ed gives Shaun while he's actually fighting zombies. And then Shaun goes out to the store, and this is one of my favorite scenes, or like half of one of my favorite scenes, I guess. This is the walk. This scene is so cool. It's a single continuous shot of Shaun walking from his apartment down to the store and then walking back to his apartment. And you might be thinking, how is this a good shot? How is this one of your favorite shots in the movie? And the reason it's so good is because this same exact shot is used a couple scenes later, but everybody is zombies. And I love it so much. It's so clean. It's so cool. And I love it with all my heart. It's so awesome. But like everything you see, this is another perfect example of what I'm talking about. Everything you see in this walking sequence. The guy at the shop, the guy walking around and he's asking for change. Every single person shows up again as a zombie. It's so clean. It's so clean. Also, this gives us a little bit of insight on what the infection is caused by or where it came from, because the newspapers read super flu scares public, bad crops are being blamed. Maybe it's due to pesticides, maybe it's due to some sort of natural infection. We don't know. But I do love that it's dropping hints towards that, even at this early in the movie. Also, I only noticed this on this time of watching this movie, but the guy behind Shaun in the shop, that's the same guy who has no arm later. Shaun goes and buys some stuff in one of the coolest scenes, and then we go to his work because he needs to go do his job. And this is where we learn how old Shaun is, 29 for Christ's sake. And this is also where we meet this fucking guy.
I was totally munted last night.
And I'm gonna be honest, I hate this guy. He's the worst character in the movie. They say that he's 17, but like, there's no fucking way that he's 17 at all. He's definitely lying about his age. There's no way he's 17. And this guy the entire time is talking shit on Shaun, chewing gum insanely loudly, texting in the middle of a job, you know, doing everything that you would hate. But sadly, this guy does win the argument with Shaun, because Shaun ends up getting in a tiff with him, you know, a little bit of a scuffle, talking about how he doesn't find it difficult to separate his work life and his personal life, and how he's going to go somewhere eventually. And then his girlfriend calls him at work about reserving restaurant plans, which in turn is the reason that his girlfriend breaks up with him. So basically, this little 17-year-old, who's definitely not actually 17 and is 100% lying about his age, just broke up Shaun and Liz because he said some shit that was annoying. And that's another thing that I noticed throughout this movie, especially during this watch through. There's a lot of butterfly effect stuff. There's a lot of cause and effect. There's a lot of domino effects where one thing happens and it leads to a chain of like 50 other things happening. But yeah, Shaun runs into his old friend and they're just chatting it up, you know, shooting the shit on the street. And the entire time behind them, there's an ambulance dealing with what we can only assume is a zombie attack. And I don't actually remember what happens exactly during this scene, like what they're doing in the background. But what I do remember is that the conversation between Shaun and his friend, who I'm forgetting the name of, just shows us more that Shaun has a terrible relationship with Liz. You know, Liz hasn't even met Shaun's mom. They only go to like one pub. They haven't really done anything with their lives. They're just kind of going through the motions. But after this scene, we go back to Shaun's place for a second time. And this is when he realizes that he fucked up because he didn't book the restaurant like he said that he was going to book. So his girlfriend's breaking up with him basically, and he's real upset about it. So he goes to her house to try to get her back, after suggesting that they go to a bar instead, the same bar that they've been going to the entire day, like time that they've been together basically. And also, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but the whole reason that booking the restaurant was so important is because that was Shaun saying like, oh, don't worry, I'll change things up, we'll be more adventurous, we'll go out to a fancy restaurant tonight, and I promise I won't fuck up. And then he fucked up. So yeah, Liz breaks up with him, and in this scene where he's at Liz's house, first of all, before he even goes into the house, we get a call back where he says, if you don't let me in, I'll break in the window, I'll climb in through the window. And later on in the movie, when there's zombies about, he does climb in through the window. But either way, during this scene when Liz is breaking up with Shaun, first of all, he brings the flowers that he was going to give to his mom to Liz to try to make her feel better. Which then, you know, he ends up throwing those flowers away later, which means he doesn't have the flowers when he goes to his mom's house. It's a whole butterfly effect, domino effect thing. And on top of that, the biggest domino effect thing is Liz mentions that Shaun was going to quit smoking, but he never did. So right in that moment, Shaun's like, all right, I'm done. And he throws his cigarettes away into the trash. And that is like the biggest domino effect thing in this entire movie. Him making that decision to quit smoking quite literally saves his life. But it doesn't save his relationship because right there, Liz completely breaks up with him. And, you know, he's real upset about it. He's real sad. So what better place to go than the bar that you go to all the time? He goes to the bar again. And this is one of my favorite scenes. I love the earlier scenes in these. And this is one of my favorite scenes. I love the earlier scenes in this movie. Basically, Shaun and Ed are talking about, you know, it's not that big of a deal that she broke up with you. You know, she's not that great. There's more fish in the sea. You can go and meet. Look at all these wonderful people in this bar. It's not a boring place. Everybody's so cool. And Ed is definitely not really gross in this scene. What the fuck, Ed? Why would you don't do this. Don't. Put that away. Get that out of here. But yeah, in this scene, we get a better look at all the people in the bar, and every single one of these people will show up later in the movie One of the most obvious people is this motherfucker cutting this lemon. I don't know what side I'm putting things on. But yeah, this guy cutting this lemon, he will show up later in a very funny scene that's very funny, and if you don't laugh, it's your fault that this isn't. Listen, all right, it's my first movie review. Don't bully me. I got hair in my eye. Fuck, I'm having so many problems right now. But yeah, this guy cutting the lemons will show up later, so remember it. Remember what he looks like. He's got a very distinct style to him, with his weird ass flannel and his what are those called? Ascot? Is it called an ascot? I think that's the wrong thing. I think that's the little scarf that Fred wears from Scooby Doo. Is that an ascot? I don't know what an ascot. This is not important. Yeah, this scene also has one of the coolest reveals, I guess, that I've seen in a zombie movie. But it's not a reveal because we knew that there were zombies before this. This is just a really cool thing that they did, where Ed is talking to Shaun about like, I'm not gonna say there's more fish in the sea. I'm not gonna say like, oh, if you love her, let her go. But what I will say is,
It's not the end of the world.
and I love the double meaning of the zombie hitting the window right in that moment when he says that. Oh man, it's so clean. But yeah, they turn the zombie away, and for some reason he actually leaves, which is a little bit funny. And then Shaun and Ed decide to walk home drunkenly. And during this scene, when they're walking home completely out of their mind, drunk, we see a couple zombies, a little bit of zombies. We see this guy, we see this couple. That's it. But yeah, that's just a funny little scene where they're showing off some zombies, showing off Shaun and Ed actually being really good friends, despite Ed being like, kind of a bad person. Because let's be real, Ed is a terrible roommate. He doesn't do anything. He's not like working at all. He's not paying for rent or anything. He just sits there all day and plays video games and then drinks beer. But you know what? He's a good guy to hang around with. He's a good time, any mate. It is a very effective way of showing off Shaun and Ed's friendship, showing that like Ed is a bad guy, but Shaun and Ed really do got a thing going. They're really good friends. So they get back to their house, and now we're showing off another thing that's like kind of hidden, like a hidden subplot in the movie, where Shaun is a DJ. And we don't really ever get to talk about this at all in the movie. Like, people don't mention this or anything. It's kind of in the background. And the only actual hint that's shown, like really shown to us is like this scene and one other where Shaun and Ed are literally DJing right then and there. And also, I guess, Shaun's album collection. That's also another big hint. But basically, Shaun is a DJ, and we know this because there's a bunch of stuff on his walls, like DJ posters, and one of them says like DJ Ninja School or something like that, which implies that he went to a school for DJing. And at some point in the movie that I don't remember, Liz says that they met in Greece, and at another point in the movie that I also don't remember, someone says that they met during a party. And so you can put the pieces together, which are basically saying Liz and Shaun met at a party because Shaun was a DJ who was traveling around the country doing like a DJ tour around the country. And I think that's how they met, which is pretty cool that you can figure that out throughout just literally background information. Like, this is all just based off of like posters on the walls and random things that people say and putting all of those together. And that's one of the things that makes this movie so cool. But during this scene, the rude roommate, the rude guy with a bad tooth, walks in, and he's really angry because he's been bit by a zombie and he's feeling real sick, So he gets pissed off at him. He calls Shaun a loser, innit? And then he's talking about, kicking Ed out because Ed's a bit of a dick. And then during that night, after he got a bunch of shit talked to him, he decides, you know what, I'm going to get my life together. I'm going to write on a whiteboard all the stuff I need to do tomorrow. And he has no clue that tomorrow is going to be a zombie apocalypse. So he writes all that shit down, and there's his to-do list. And as he passes out on the chair, right after writing some shit down, we hear helicopters coming in. And now comes the second half of the coolest scene ever ever made. This is the coolest scene. I don't care what anyone says. This is him walking back to the store in one continuous shot, but this time, everybody that we saw before is a zombie, including Suit Guy that was behind him in the previous day, but this time, he's behind him without an arm. And I love the execution of this scene because not only is it one continuous shot and everybody did a flawless job acting, but also it implies so much about the way that these zombies work. Because you see the suit guy, the suit guy with no arm, he sees Shaun in the shop, right? And then he follows Shaun all the way back to his house. And later on in the movie, like a little bit later, not too much later, we'll talk about it in a minute, he shows up again because he followed him all the way from the store to his house and into the open door. And I love that so much. I love the idea of that. It's basically saying these zombies are incredibly dumb and incredibly slow, but they're also very persistent. They will follow you wherever you go. So Shaun goes back to his house, not knowing that he's being followed by a zombie, and he just chills out and watches some TV with Ed, you know? But to everyone's surprise, so now comes one of the coolest reveals of the characters figuring out that the zombies are zombies that I've ever seen. And I mean, it's obviously very much too gruesome for us to put on YouTube, but this is one of the coolest reveals I've seen. They find this lady in their backyard, and she looks completely drunk, so they just assume she's, you know, out of her mind, you know, she's completely drunk right now. And as she starts, you know, basically assaulting Shaun, Ed's like, hold on, I'm gonna go get my camera. And he takes a picture of her. And during that time when he's taking the picture and Shaun is like fighting her off, they get to see her eyes and they're like, what's going on with her? What is up with her eyes right now? And then she gets a little, you know, she's going a little bit too much. She's doing too much. She's getting a little too overzealous. So Shaun decides to push her away, you know, get her, just push her back, get her off of him. But he accidentally pushes so good, like too good. And she stumbles all the way back and falls onto a garden pole. We can't show that at all. We can't show it at all. But this scene where she like pulls herself off of the fucking garden pole and you can see through her to see Shaun and Ed. Oh man. What a scene. What a reveal. What a way for them to figure out that they're like, oh man. So they decide to go inside, and when they turn around, they see a big man. So they lock the zombies outside and they just sit there and watch TV again. And during this TV program, the newscaster talks about, you know, destroy their head, barricade your homes, wait my ass. What's the... But during this news service, he also says, don't leave your doors open. And then Shaun realizes he left his door open. And then Suit Guy shows up. Suit Guy from the shop, and he was from the shop earlier, and he's here now. It's Suit Guy. And then they kill him. But this scene is really cool. I love the way that they fight this zombie because it's so realistic. The execution is amazing. I love the acting here because it feels like what would genuinely happen if two random people who haven't really done anything that dangerous in life were fighting a zombie. It's one of the more realistic interpretations of that I've seen.
Oh, for God's sake, always got armor! Get him!
Like they're basically just freaking out, just throwing shit at him, whatever they can get their hands on, until one of them is like, all right, I've had a second to think. Let me use a heavy glass object. And then even after that, Shaun's like reaction being like, holy shit, we just like killed a dude. Like, it's so cool. It's so cool. The execution is awesome. And then they're like, all right, so we killed one of them. We can definitely take the rest of them. Let's go outside and kill the other two. So they start throwing random shit, including Shaun's music disc collection, which is giving us another hint about how he's a DJ. But none of that really works, you know, like one of the discs breaks and it does a little bit of damage, but at the end of the day, nothing's really doing anything. So Shaun breaks into the shed and gets the iconic weapons of a cricket bat and a shovel. And I know they don't seem iconic, and they honestly shouldn't be, considering they show up in this movie for like a total of 15 minutes. But they're the weapons that they use, you know? They're the iconic weapons, alright? So they beat the shit out of the zombies in the backyard. And then they sit down for a little bit and watch some more TV. Because what else would you do in a zombie apocalypse, you know? So then Shaun remembers that he knows people. And he freaks out because he's like, oh shit, my girlfriend might be dead, my mom might be dead. I have to do my plan from yesterday that I wrote on the whiteboard. Remember the whiteboard? Remember that? So this whole next scene is Shaun and Ed planning out a way to get to the Winchester and get everyone there safely. And I love this scene of them just like slowly figuring out the way to get there, because when it shows this this montage sequence of what's gonna happen, like what the plan is, everybody's so happy and so joyous because Shaun is like, my plan could never fail. My plan is amazing, which means that like everyone in these scenes is like enjoying their life, having a great time, laughing. Shaun running out of the house like holding his mom in his arms, like, oh man, it's so funny. Oh yeah, also they may have to kill Philip.
Oh, okay. Has she been bitten? No, Philip has. Oh, okay.
But before they go kill Philip, Shaun has to take a wee, take a little bit of a wee sports. So he goes to the bathroom, he uses the bathroom and all that, and we don't get to see that. Jesus Christ. But yeah, he uses the bathroom and he closes the mirror and he sees his roommate, who was taking a shower and then became a zombie. So he opens up the shower only to see his roommate and get very scared. And then he tells the zombified roommate exactly where they're going, and he says that if he wants to, he can meet them there later and they'll have a little bit of a chit-chat, And with that, he leaves, goes out of the bathroom, closes the door, and they take his car and they go to Shaun's mom's house. Where else would they go? They gotta go pick up his mom before anything. Also, I don't think I mentioned this, but there's a really cool reference here where Ed says, we're coming to get you, Barbara. And the only reason that Shaun's mom was named Barbara is so that they can do this reference to the original Dawn of the Dead. In that original black and white film, they say, they're coming to get you, Barbara. Ed does the same thing. But of course to Shaun's mom, whose name is Barbara. So they go to Shaun's mom's house, and Shaun is ready with it. He's ready to kill Philip, but Philip's not zombie yet. He's not dead yet. So they have a whole argument. Shaun's talking to his mom about like, how much do you really love Philip? He's making up a lot of bullshit like, oh yeah, he beat me as a kid to try to get her to not really care about him so he can kill him when he becomes a zombie. But at the end of the day, they end up reluctantly going with Shaun to the bar, bringing the zombified dad with them. Well, he's not a zombie yet, but he's getting there. So they go outside to, get out of there and leave. But Ed has crashed the stationary car so that he can take the dad's cooler car. And that whole fiasco leads to the dad being bit in the neck by a zombie. I don't know what else he'd be bit by, but yeah, the dad is now bit by a zombie, and they get into the car and they drive away super fast. He's going as quick as possible because Ed's a bad person and he likes to drive fast. He's like the cool guy, you know how it is. So yeah, Shaun has saved his mom and his dad technically, but he's not his dad though. And now they're on their way over to Liz's house, where he's going to climb in through the window this time. And this time he actually does. He climbs up through the window, he convinces them to go with him to the bar, and they all decide, yeah, you know what? It might be better than here. Let's go to the Winchester, huh? So off they go, back to the...
What's up, niggas?
Holy shit, Ed. There is no fucking way you said 2024, Ed? It's 2024 right now. There's no way. He really said that. This is one of those moments that I was talking about where it's very much a product of its time. I don't know how they got away with this at all, but you know what? Everything else in the movie is so masterfully done that I kind of have to look past this. So Ed drives fast and aggressively, and Shaun's dad dies. And during this scene, it's a big dramatic moment where Shaun's dad is talking to him about how he was never really a good father and he wanted to be a better father. And this is one of the cool parts about this movie. All the comedy comes from stuff that's happening around the characters, which means they can have really serious moments like this, where Shaun is talking to his dad about how he never really felt like a good father. And it doesn't clash with the comedy, because the characters don't know they're being funny. They don't know that they're making jokes. They don't know they're trying to do comedy on the regular, but it's just happening around them. And that's shown immediately after this scene where his dad becomes a zombie. They all freak out. They get out of the car. And then he's like, trying to convince his mom not to go in the car with the zombie. And he's like, no, there's nothing left of your husband in there. And Then he, turns off the music that he hates. It's very funny. I love the way they do it. But yeah, at this point, they're locked out of their car. The zombie dad is in the car. He's turned off the music, so they got nowhere to go but to run. But they don't have a car anymore. They're walking around on foot. It cuts forward a little bit in time, and we're walking to the Winchester. And they ask Shaun, "How do you know that we're close to the Winchester?" Or are we close to the Winchester or something? And then they show Snake Boots, which was someone who showed up earlier in the movie in the bar scene when Ed and Shaun were talking about breaking up with Liz. And I really love the callbacks here because he sees Snake Boots, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we're definitely close to the Winchester." And I just love that callback because, if you didn't pay attention, you wouldn't understand what the fuck they're talking about or, why that means anything. It's a very cool way of conveying stuff. And this is also where they meet their stunt doubles. And with that funny bit out of the way, they find themselves close to the Winchester, but they're separated by a hedge of sorts. A little bit of a bush, if you will. But yeah, basically they can't get to the Winchester because they're in the backyard of a house instead of where they need to be. So Shaun's mom leaves the group to go inside and go check around to see if the neighbors are still there. And Shaun leaves the group a little bit to go check and see if the zombies are in the streets. They both find zombies, but in a different way. Shaun finds out there's a ton of zombies on the road, like a ton. And Shaun's mom finds out that zombies can bite you and it hurts. But yeah, Shaun saves his mom from the zombie, and then he impales that zombie to a tree. And they decide the only way for them to get to the Winchester at this point, instead of just abandoning the Winchester and being like, let's go somewhere else, they decide to walk through the horde of zombies and just use acting skills to get through the zombies. And I think this is one of the coolest scenes done with this type of action. The main characters in the zombie apocalypse are walking through a horde of zombies, pretending to be zombies. This has been done before in stuff like The Walking Dead, but this is one of the coolest ways I've seen it done because this is entirely based off of your acting skills. It has nothing to do with oh, you're covered in their smell so they don't smell normal human and they think you're a zombie. It's nothing like that. This is literally, you have to act like a zombie, because if you don't, you're fucked. And I love that idea. It's entirely based off of your composure. It's entirely based off of how well you can keep it together. And, I mean, spoiler alert, they can. They do end up getting to the Winchester, but as soon as they get there, the door is locked, and they completely break character, having a little bit of a tiff, Shaun and Ed get in an argument because Ed tries to sell weed to somebody in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. So all the zombies are staring at them at this point in time, and they're trying to come up with a strategy. Shaun says that we should lead the zombies around, get them away from the entrance, and we can use the back door. But David says, "Oh, I'm gonna be dumb and throw a thing through a window." I hate David. I really do. We haven't talked about it a lot so far in this review, but David is the worst. But yeah, David gets real scared, and he throws a trash can through a window. But it's still a terrible idea, so they're not gonna go through the window, at least not until Shaun runs off with all the zombies. So Shaun is leading the zombies away. He's running away from everybody, taking the zombies with him. And after they leave, after the zombies are out of sight, they go into the Winchester. But before they actually get inside, Shaun's mom finds the flowers that Shaun threw into a trash can for her, I guess. They were for her, but he didn't throw them in the trash. You know what I'm saying. And now it's time for David to be the worst character. In this scene, David starts talking all this shit, saying, "Oh, Shaun's a bad leader. I'm a better leader than him. I'm so cool. Shaun's so dumb." And then he's immediately shut up when Shaun pulls back up, because Shaun is the coolest guy, and he's not just gonna abandon them. He gave them the slip. What did you think was gonna But yeah, this whole time they've just been assuming that the power was out, but it reaches that certain point in the nighttime when the street lights turn on. So they realize that the power's not out, the breaker just blew, which then leads to, Shaun breaking away from the group. He goes to turn on the power. He ends up finding out that the zombies did in fact follow him, and he did not in fact give them the slip. So with the knowledge that there's a ton of zombies behind him, Shaun goes back and only mentions it to Liz, very quietly, because at this point they have to be quiet if they don't want to deal with the giant horde of zombies. But honestly, they shouldn't have even told Liz. You should have told fucking Ed, because here he comes with that Dracula machine I was talking about. Still don't know what it is, but he comes in clutch with that Dracula machine, winning the jackpot and making the biggest noise possible. So now comes the funny scene where the jukebox goes off on its own, and it's on random, so it's playing the funniest song you could think of. And they're fighting the good old lemon guy, the guy that was cutting up lemons before that I said to remember. You remember him with the ascot? That's probably not an ascot. So they do a whole thing where they fight this guy with a bunch of pool cues, but it doesn't do much. And they end up breaking the pool cues on him to no avail, like there's no damage done to him at all. So he's, at this point, him and Shaun are basically wrestling. And all the other people around him are trying to help him out. And Yvonne, I think is her name. What a weird name, by the way. She tries to help Shaun by throwing darts directly into his head. And the idea of that is so... Oh man, I don't even want to think about it. That's fucked up. How is he okay after that? How is he okay? He got a dart in his head. But yeah, at this point in time, Shaun's just angry because he has a dart in his head. So he kills the zombie by shoving him into the jukebox, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, or more accurately, killing 1 zombie with 1 action. And in this moment, Shaun figures out that the gun actually works. The Winchester above the bar hasn't been unloaded or deactivated. It's a real gun with real bullets, and it's shooting. So it's time to become a Texas Ranger for Shaun. It's time to really be that cool guy. Except he's not, and he misses most of his shots. And I actually kind of love that, because it's really showing that, like, he's not a professional. This is just a normal motherfucker. So he's gonna miss most of his shots. And this is also the scene where they do the callback to earlier in the movie when he was playing the game, and he gives the same call-outs. It's really cool. But what's not cool is that Shaun's mom is dead and dying right now. And it's a big reveal where, they explain that she's been bit, and David's like, we gotta shoot her in the head. And Shaun's like, what the fuck? Why? What's wrong with you? What, do you hate me or something? So they get in a whole argument. They're fighting each other. They're holding each other up in a good old standoff. But it has to be fair, right? So, of course, Ed's handing everybody a weapon, making sure everybody's got something. And I love that bit so much. I love the idea of that. So yeah, at this point, David and Shaun are straight up just arguing because Shaun knows that David hates Shaun. And David knows that Shaun hates David. You know what I'm saying. They hate each other. They're fighting each other. But Liz kind of agrees with David, even though he's a, bit of a dick. So she talks everybody down, they put all their weapons away, and she explains to Shaun that they literally have to shoot the zombie. So Shaun's like, all right, fair enough, and he shoots his mom. But right after shooting his mom, David decides to talk all that shit. So Shaun does the only thing that you would do in this moment, and he decks him, absolutely knocks the shit out of him. And David's real upset about that, so he tries to shoot him with a gun. But David is also really dumb, so he didn't know that you have to, cock the gun before shooting it again. What are you, an idiot, David? But yeah, David tries to shoot Shaun. It doesn't work. He gets embarrassed, and then he tries to leave. But they talk him out of it. They talk him out of leaving right out the main door and killing literally all of them. So instead, he goes right next to that, goes to a window, and he gets ready to apologize to Shaun. Only after apologizing to Liz, because, didn't, force Liz to kill her mom, but she deserves more of an apology than Shaun. I hate David. And so do the zombies, because they immediately break open the window and kill him in one of the most gruesome ways that I have ever seen someone die in a zombie movie. Like, as a kid, it didn't seem that gruesome to me, but like rewatching it, it's like, holy shit. He literally gets torn apart. Like, the entirety of this area gets taken outwards to other areas. Like, it's... But yeah, David's dead, which is, honestly pretty good. David deserved it. And Yvonne is chasing after him out the main door, doing exactly what they talked David down from doing 2 seconds ago. That's kind of a tongue twister. And she's literally chasing after him with his severed leg, being like, I'll help you, I'm gonna save your life, with his leg, using his leg as a weapon. And she runs out of the building. So at this point, it's Liz, Ed, and Shaun, and a shit ton of zombies. And the zombies are really pouring in at this point. Shaun and Liz are fighting off as many zombies as they can, but Ed is being bitten by their roommate who showed up. He pulled up. Ed invited him out earlier. Shaun invited him out. I get the names mixed up sometimes. Shaun invited him out earlier, and he took him up on that offer, but he still hates Ed, so he bites him. Ed, he's getting bit by a lot of zombies. Shaun, he just shot his roommate in the face. And Liz is literally holding back a horde with a hat rack. I don't know how she's doing that, but honestly, bravo. You know, damn, bravo. Round of applause. Some of the most stupid golf clap. That was pathetic. That was ridiculous. But yeah, at this point, they're getting overrun with zombies, so Shaun and Liz jump over the counter, and Ed slowly follows, you know, jumping over the counter, but only after a couple of 30 seconds of being eaten by zombies, you know? So at this point, they're all behind the counter, and Shaun lights the counter on fire, but the counter had a lot of bullets on it. All the bullets, in fact. So now they have no ammo, everything around them is on fire, and they're next to a guy who's currently bleeding out because he's been eaten by zombies. And all they have left is an empty gun and a dream. But thankfully that dream does involve fire, so all the bullets start activating and going off randomly, killing zombies around them, giving them time to go into the cellar underneath them that was like a beer wine cellar, you know. So, you know, the zombies die around them. They go into the cellar, you know, they go down there, and they know that they're fucked at this point because they're basically cornered. But this is where one of the biggest butterfly effect things come back in this movie. And that's the good old Shaun throwing away his cigarettes. You remember that? You remember when Shaun threw away his cigarettes? Liz took them out of the trash and started smoking them because she wasn't actually quitting. She wasn't doing the thing that she said she was going to do. And because of that, they lived, because they both decided to have one more cigarette before they die. And in doing so, when Shaun lights the lighter, he finds the button which leads to the exit of the building that they're in, and that is the only reason they survive. So Shaun making that decision in that moment to quit smoking and change his life literally saved them right there and made it so that they can live. But, you know, Ed can't, because he's bit by a bunch of zombies, like a lot. He's bleeding out. So Shaun and Ed have this big dramatic moment, and it's actually really effective at being dramatic because, like I said earlier, they're not making jokes. The jokes are just happening around them, so it leaves them open to do dramatic stuff like this without it being like weird or feeling out of character or being like forced. It feels so perfect. It's really good. So, leaving Ed behind, Liz and Shaun go up to the streets with a fire axe and a chain. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what Liz thought she was about to do with that chain, but it is nothing. What do you do? What? A metal? Come on, man. You can't fight a zombie with that. What are you, stupid? But thankfully, they don't need to fight the zombies because right as they're about to swing, the army pulls up, blinding them with lights and killing everybody. And who else would have called the army, you know, besides Shaun's stunt double from earlier, the same lady that he talked to at the beginning in front of the zombies or whatever that were like the ambulance that was taking the guy in. I don't actually know what that was though. That might have been a car crash. Might have just been a car crash. Either way, not important. What is important is that they got saved by the military because of the stunt double lady. And now Liz and Shaun are back together, living their normal lives, doing what they do best, just chilling out, shooting the shit. And we hear a bunch of missed call messages during this scene where it reveals that Yvonne actually lived. She survived the encounter of taking her boyfriend's leg and running out of the building. She didn't get bit at all, which is kind of surprising, but we learn how she lives throughout the comics. But yeah, Shaun is a little bit more adventurous than he was before, putting sugar in his tea instead of not. That counts. And him and Liz live happily ever after, but not just him and Liz, because he goes out to the garage and Ed's also there. Also, fun fact, that 17-year-old who's definitely not 17 and was talking all that shit ends up living the rest of his undead life as a service worker, like he was saying to Shaun that Shaun was going to do, which is a really funny bit that I only noticed this time watching. But yeah, there's a ton of stuff like that throughout this movie that comes back later. You already know, we've already said it. And with that, they wrap up the movie by Shaun and Ed playing a little bit of a video game. You know, Ed may be a zombie, but he's still killing it. You know, he's still playing that video game, and he has the same skill level as he did when he was alive. Whether that's an insult to him as a human, or whether that's a compliment to him as a zombie, you decide. And with that being said, that's the end of that movie. That's it. That's what happens in this movie. This movie is really good. I love every second of this movie. They don't waste anything. Every single line that they use is brought back up later. Every single character is like very in depth. They have a lot of stuff to them. I guess the most shallow character, like the most face value character, is probably Ed. But even he has a lot going on. It's a very cool movie with a lot of very cool stuff. Is really what this boils down to, and that's what we're going to talk about now. I love the way the camera works in this movie. The camera work is insane. The shots, the transitions, the weird like jump cuts, everything about this movie is shot beautifully. I love the action shots. They feel like a lot of the time with action movies when the camera is moving around a shit ton, kind of fucks up the scene. But I think it works really well here because when it does move, it's when it needs to move. Like a really good example of what I'm talking about specifically is when Yvonne throws the dart into Shaun's head. You see like the camera kind of like stabilize on her getting ready to throw the dart, and when she throws it, it's like a big jump cut. You can't see anything, super blurry. But when it hits Shaun, it's like very clear that it's hitting him, you know? And I don't know what that camera technique would be called. I'm not a professional, but what I do know is that it's really cool. And another thing that's really cool is this butterfly effect stuff that I was talking about, or just like the things coming back up later on. Like we mentioned earlier, Shaun was saying like, "Oh, leave him alone" throughout the whole movie, and then when it comes down to it, and he actually ends up killing that roommate as a zombie, he says the same exact thing. There's a lot of stuff like that that comes back later, and I love that. It really feels like they didn't waste any time with this movie, and even all the people in the background, every single background actor comes back as a zombie in some way, shape, or form, and you can see him around the place. Like the kid who kicks a soccer ball at him and he says, "You're dead," which is a little funny because he's literally a zombie in the next scene. He is dead. But I just love the environmental storytelling and all the stuff that happens around the place. Like there's also there's also some really cool shots that don't really have anything to do with anything but are awesome looking. Like for example, when they're driving throughout the town and they're seeing how crazy everything is, it shows like a shot of somebody in a body bag in the back of an open ambulance, but the body bag is like moving around a shit ton. Like it's so cool. And just the interactions with the zombies, it feels really realistic. It really feels like two people just kind of stumbling through the apocalypse, or more than two, but I say two because Shaun and Ed, they're the main guys. And a lot of the cool examples of them interacting with zombies do involve Shaun and Ed specifically. Like that first scene when they kill Suit Guy. Man, I love the way they act there. It's so clean. So yeah, with that being said, I think overall this movie doesn't really have any problems with it. There's a little bit of stuff where it's like this is very much a product of its time. They say a couple things in the movie that would not fly nowadays for sure. But other than that, this movie really is great. I love most things about this movie. And it's not the only one either. There's two other movies in this same exact style that aren't about the zombie apocalypse, but it do involve Shaun and Ed as actual actors. Which, for anyone wondering, Shaun is played by Simon Pegg and Ed is played by Nick Frost. Both great actors. Love everything that they're in. Except for Mission Impossible. Never watched that. I don't know if it's good or not. At least not the ones with Simon Pegg in them. Either way, not important. We also got Kate Ashfield as Liz. I feel like I should probably say the people that did the acting. Dylan Moran as David. I'm sure Dylan Moran is a great guy, but holy shit, I hate David. And I think that's like, props to Dylan Moran. He plays a really good guy that you hate. And it's probably even extra impressive because I bet he's a great guy. I bet he's a great guy. We got Jessica Hines as Yvonne, which, like, what a name. Yvonne? Come on, man. Who put that in the script? And then we got Penelope Wilton as Shaun's mom, the classic actor. I've seen her in a couple things besides this movie, and a lot of them do also involve Simon Pegg. But yeah, either way, everybody did their parts amazingly in this movie. Everybody did awesome. And now let's talk about the comics, because these are also a really cool thing that this movie has that kind of show you what happens in between certain scenes where you're like, oh, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, for example, the very first one is Shaun leading the zombies away, but they still followed him. That didn't make a lot of sense, so they did a whole comic book explaining it, how he had to like stop and wait for them to catch up to him. He's like checking his watch and shit. And when he leaves and he gives them the slip, quote unquote, one zombie turns around and sees him. and that's all they needed. The rest of the horde came and followed him back to the Winchester because of that. And the second comic explains what happens to Yvonne when she leaves the place with her boyfriend's leg in hand as a blunt instrument. Basically, she runs away through a horde of zombies, not getting bit at all, and then she climbs a tree, eats her boyfriend's leg for a couple days, then climbs out of the tree and realizes everything's good again. That's what happens to her. That's what that comic describes. And it also explains how Ed made it back to Shaun's shed without being dead. That was that was completely accidental. I swear that was accidental. But yeah, that comic explains that Ed basically collaterals them, shoots them in the head, takes out a couple of them, and then uses their dead bodies to hide underneath the stairs so that the army doesn't find him while he's a zombie and kill him, which then makes it so that Ed, or Shaun, I mean, can come back later to the basement to, like, you know, pay his respects or whatever, but then he finds him there instead and brings him back to his house. It's a really cool way of conveying that stuff. I love that. What a cool bonus feature. Because that's what those originally were. They were bonus features on like the movie disc. But yeah, overall, this movie, I think it's a masterpiece. I think this movie is great. It's a wonderful movie. It's got some stuff that's like a product of its time that wouldn't fly nowadays. You know, we already said this. But other than that, this movie really is great. I love the directing. I love the way it's shot. I love the acting. Everything about it is wonderful. So with that being said, that's the end of this review. Hopefully you enjoyed. Go check this movie out for yourself. It's not really on streaming platforms anymore. It's kind of like a lost media a little bit. It's very hard to find this movie. But if you can find it, go watch this movie. It's so worth it. It's such a good watch. And with that being said, I'm gonna end the video. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. Like and subscribe and all that shit if you did. If you want to see more stuff I've made, it should be appearing on screen now. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. Peace out.